Now I want to speak just for a second on field notes. Now, if you're going to be writing investigative reports, you obviously are going to have field notes or notes that you take while you're doing your investigation. And this is the original source document for your report. So as you're on the scene level, doing things at the scene, or talking to people later on, you're going to be taking notes as to what you see, what you observe, and the actions that you take. And this is what's going to be used in your final report. So if your field notes are incomplete, inaccurate, poorly organized, written in such a way that you can't read them later, then they're of very little use to you, because when you go back to write your final narrative, you're going to be looking at your your field notes, and not understand what it is you did at the time. So they need to be accurate. They need to be very, very organized in the chronological order of what you did, who you talked to, what actions you took, and of course, written in such a way that you can understand them later. Also, they need to be taken at the scene at the time that you are doing the action. Now, I know that there's times that you have to do a few actions. You're doing something or talking to somebody. You may have to go back and write some notes on your conversation. But if you can write notes as you're going, for instance, you could say the date and the time, spoke to John Smith, and as you're talking to John Smith, you might make a few notes as to what you and John Smith talked about. Now, after you leave John Smith and go back into your vehicle, you might make a few extra notes to summarize your conversation, and that's fine. But what you don't want to do is wait till the end of the day or the next day to summarize your conversation with John Smith. And also, if you're doing notes while on the scene, let's say you're manipulating a body and you're rolling the body looking for injuries, you're noting what type of clothing they have on, what position they were in, lying, sitting, hanging, the level of decomposition, whether there was insects present, all of that stuff needs to be documented as you go. So that brings up the other part, scribe or recorder. Sometimes when you're down in the mud and the blood doing the job, you can't necessarily take written notes, because you're down on your hands and knees looking at a body, looking at evidence and doing things, and trying to take gloves on and off and write notes is difficult. So there's a couple of things to think about. Number one, you could use a digital recorder. You could turn it on, put it in your pocket, and you can just talk through your scene. And by doing that, you will have a record of what you saw and what you did, as long as you narrate it, and you could go back and use that for your report. Something else you could do is, when you're in the situations where you cannot write, because your hands are busy, you could use a scribe. And a scribe is just somebody that you have designated to write notes for you. It could be a patrol officer, it could be a junior detective, it could be anybody that is helping you, and they just write down what you tell them to write down. And you'll have an accurate recording at the time, so that you don't have to go back later on when you get your gloves off and get out of the scene to actually write down what you remember. You're writing it down, they are writing it down for you as you go. And then you've got things like digital cameras, body cams, dash cams. If you're a police officer and you have dash cam footage, body cam footage, all of that can be used as notes to rewrite your report, because you can review dash cam footage or body cam footage to remind yourself of what went on, who said what action somebody took. Those are also considered notes or field notes, part of your investigation. Now, lastly, I want to talk about keeping your notes or destroying your notes. Now, over the 35 years that I've been in law enforcement, that has been kind of a topic that wavers back and forth between between investigator and between agency. And so in some regard, there's an argument to destroy all your notes. After you write down all of your notes and you put everything in your report that's accurate and factual, then destroy your notes. And the reason why people argued about destroying it is because if defense attorneys find out that you have field notes, they're going to subpoena those, and they're going to look at your field notes to see if they match your written report, your final report, and if there's information in your field notes that you left out of your written report. So the argument is, destroy your notes. Destroy your notes in every case, and then they can't be subpoenaed because you've destroyed them. Now, the danger is when you say you destroy them and it's found out later that you have them, then that can be a problem. Also, if you keep them, keep them all, or keep none of them, or keep all your death cases, or to get a system is what I'm trying to say. So, but here's what I advocate. Burglaries, and if you're a police officer and you're working burglaries and stolen bicycles and drug cases and whatever else, throw them away. I don't care. But if you're working a death case and you're investigating a death, whether you be a police officer, a detective, a coroner, medical examiner, investigator, and you're working a death, keep your notes. So what if the defense attorney gets them and reads them? Nothing in your notes should be inaccurate anyway. Now, the question is, can your opinion be in your notes? Absolutely. Your opinion can be in your notes, but your opinion cannot be in your final narrative, right? So if you're talking to Susie Jones and you put notes of what you talked about and you circle off to the side, re-interview Susie Jones, I think she's lying about where she was Friday night. Or check Susie Jones's alibi, I don't think she was working Friday night, and circle it, that's an opinion. Or that's an investigative lead. Or that's just a note to you to continue your investigation. Now a defense attorney may come up and say, hey, you had this as a suspect, or you said she was lying to you. What did you find out about that? No problem. Again, it's part of your investigation. That's what you did. Now, what you don't want to do is put things like, hey, Susie Jones is hot, get her phone number, call for date, and circle that. Obviously, that's going to get you in trouble. And so it isn't a matter of somebody reading your report, or I'm sorry, reading your notes. Your notes are your notes, but here's why a death case is important to keep. Because when that case goes cold, if anybody that watching this has ever worked a cold case, and for those of you that haven't, I will verify for you, when you work a cold case that's multiple years old, it is fantastic to open that box and have notes from the investigator. Because the only thing in his final narrative has to be fact, accurate and factual. In his notes, however, he can have opinions, he can have side investigations, thoughts and theories and things that he's tracking down in his notes. As a cold case investigator, that is invaluable in coming up with new leads and ultimately solving a case. So if you want to throw away all of your other notes and only keep your death notes, then you can do that. And you can just say, as of this date, I started keeping all of my notes in death cases, but destroy everything else. Prior to that, I destroyed them all, but as of this date, I keep all my notes in death cases. Now, you can file them in your computer system at your agency. You can also keep your own notebook, copy them, make them digital, whatever it is, but they are useful not only for your final report, but also if the case goes cold. And don't worry about them being subpoenaed, because as long as you are accurate, organized, and they're legible, nothing in your report, nothing in your field notes is going to mess up your final narrative. So rethink your field notes. Rethink about how important they are, and rethink about how you need to keep them or destroy them. And remember, your field note is the original source document for your report. So they have to be accurate, properly organized, and legible so that you can read them later.